Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin Ryan, and my pronouns are he, him. I am the research assistant for Dr. Antoinette Farmer, Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Rutgers School of Social Work. I will be graduating with my MSW degree in May. The IDEA Committee, which stands for Inclusion, Intersectionality, Diversity, Equity, and Advancement, was established in fall 2020 as a part of the school's strategic plan toward a more just future. The IDEA Committee advances diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives within the School of Social Work, the university as a whole, and the larger social work community. Thank you for joining us for another Research Spotlight interview. I am here with Dr. Gale. Dr. Adrian Gale, an assistant professor at Rutgers University School of Social Work, conducts research utilizing various risk and resilience and ecological system theories to examine the schooling experiences of Black children and adolescents. His interests lie in understanding the relationships between socio-demographic factors such as gender and socioeconomic and Black youth school beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors. His research aims to identify promotive and protective factors for Black youth who have encountered risks within their schools, including racial discrimination. Additionally, his scholarship investigates how school-related factors like relationships with teachers may influence Black adolescents' educational outcomes. Dr. Gale's work contributes to a deeper understanding of how challenging school experiences, such as hostile school climates and unfair disciplinary practices, pose risks to Black adolescents' outcomes and how these risks can be overcome. Hi, Dr. Gale. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me today.
Hi, Calvin. Thanks for having me. And congratulations on graduating in May. That's exciting.
Thank you so much. So, can you please tell us about a current research initiative of yours that is related to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay. So in general, my program of research is about how Black adolescents school experiences impact their psychological as well as educational outcomes. And I'm working on a number of projects that are interested in-person experiences, such as relationships with teachers and peers, as well as virtual experiences. So the extent to which Black adolescents interact with their peers on the internet, on social media, as well as the way that they interact with their teachers, such as through email, over Zoom, etc. And this work is connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion because it looks at how we can improve the outcomes of Black adolescents, but also how we can highlight areas that Black adolescents are doing well. So a lot of the work that has been done, unfortunately, in this area focuses on sort of a deficit model, looking at areas that Black youth don't do as well, areas that they may be struggling without putting these outcomes into proper contextual understanding. So my work seeks to do that as well.
And I think that's really kind of crucial to social work, working from that kind of strengths-based perspective.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so I do apply a strength-based perspectives. Yeah, so just not looking at the deficits, but focusing on the strengths that Black youth have, and the ways that they are excelling in their classrooms despite the risks that they face.
What are the policy and/or clinical implications of your research for the field of social work?
So I think there's important, first I'll talk about the policy implications. So when we talk about school experiences and for example, school climate, that's the extent to which people in the school interact or have good positive interactions with one another. So this is teachers, peers, staff, etc. We tend to focus on what's happening within the four walls of the school, and our policy is about what happens there, which makes a lot of sense. But we live in 2024, and we know that the experiences that young people have are happening on social media, over the internet, via email, over text, and technologies involved. So I think one of the policy implications and sort of the new area that I'm interested in, these sort of virtual or online experiences, there needs to be policy that addresses that. So the implications are, driving us as social workers and driving policymakers to think about how do we include or account for these online experiences that happen outside the four walls of the school, but influence what happens within the four walls of the school. And I think that's a complicated issue, but it's something that we have to deal with if we're going to understand the experiences that Black youth and sort of all youth are having, but also improve these experiences so that they will lead to more positive psychological and educational outcomes.
I'm really hearing you saying like that the policy kind of will the policies that are made outside of the school will directly impact like the youth within the school.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. For example, we know that Black youth tend to be punished more harshly for similar infractions within the school as are their peers, as compared to their peers from other racial and ethnic backgrounds. And you know, one question that raises, well, if we know this is happening in the school and it's having this sort of deleterious impact on their outcomes, you know, what happens when they have these experiences online? What happens when, for example, bullying that happens within the four walls of the school extends into sort of the online space on social media? I don't see it as much now, thankfully, but I remember being in college and seeing these videos of students being bullied within their schools. And if I'm seeing it, that means that everyone inside of their school environment is seeing it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting to kind of think about the role that like media and like technology and the internet is having
Yeah.
on youth within schools now, especially like we're living in like post-COVID now.
Yeah.
In a time, well, that was a time where it was very heavily technology oriented, and like kind of moving on from that, it's an interesting kind of dynamic to navigate.
Yeah, I think COVID shined a spotlight on the way that technology can be used in the classroom for better or for worse, right? You know, we're on Zoom right now. And you know, a lot of us suffered like a Zoom fatigue. So we learned there's some sort of limit of how long someone can be in front of a camera and engage. But you know, I think, you know, with that spotlight being shined on technology and the way it can be used in the classroom, it also showed us that we don't have a lot of good policy when it comes to what students do online. For example, there was this one case where this little boy was on Zoom classroom and he had like a toy gun or something like that. And because of sort of this ambiguity in terms of what rules exist on Zoom, so Zoom at that time was sort of assumed to be part of the four, you know, within the four walls, even though obviously the child was at home, and then the child gets punished. I think it was a Black boy. But the point remains is like if there's any ambiguity in policy, then we may see some youth who tend to be punished more harshly. Maybe they're punished more harshly online, and then I will say I'm also interested, like you know talked about in the introduction, in promotive and protective factors. So is it that so we know that within a school, if students have a teacher that they feel connected to or feel supported by, that they tend to have more positive outcomes. And this is even in the face of challenging school climate. So I'm in a school that I think is hostile, but have a supportive teacher, then I, as the adolescent or as a student, would tend to do better. We're not sure if that extends to the online environment. So, for example, if I perceive sort of a hostile online environment related to my school or at my school, is having a supportive teacher or feeling connected to a teacher in the school, does that protect me against these sort of negative outcomes that are associated with a hostile, what I'm calling a virtual school climate? And we would expect that, but it's an empirical question. We're not sure, right? So we would expect a supportive teacher or being connected to the school to be protective against negative outcomes, but we're not sure. So that's where my research is going. And then I think you asked about practice. I know I talked a lot about policy. Um, yeah, I think it's important to think about social workers in general and then school social workers in particular. What are the events that are happening at school that may be impacting adolescents within the school, their outcomes within the school? So, of course, we care about educational outcomes, but also overall functioning, such as um, their well-being, whether it be depression, anxiety. I think it's important to think about these things. And we know that for Black adolescents, I think Black boys in particular, one of the first places where they sort of come in contact with mental health services is through their schools. So the first time that a child may, so it may be, let me say this, it may be happening at home. There may be some sort of psychological issue or something that's occurring at home. But for many Black youth, the first time that they are faced with or come in contact with mental health services is within their school. So that'd be a teacher maybe noticing the child is not doing well, and then they send them to the school social worker, and that sort of snowballs into whatever services happen. So I think it's important to keep that in mind when we think about practice. Is that for many youth, the school social worker is going to be the first mental health professional that they see.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gale, for sharing your research and your initiatives and what you're focusing on with us today. Do you have anything else that you would like to add about your research before we close out today?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe you may have to delete this one, or I don't know. I think that it's important when we talk about negative experiences in the schools, sort of relationship within the schools, I think that these can be improved. So I do focus on hostile school environments, or you would say negative school climate. So the extent that kids don't feel welcome in their school or they don't feel connected to their schools, particularly Black youth within their schools. But I believe that this can be improved. I think many of the factors that impact adolescents' outcomes are things like family income, things like neighborhood, things that are not so easily changed. But I think that by focusing on school climate, which is something that can be changed, and a lot it's a lot easier, I think, to sort of fix the climate than to sort of address all these other issues that eventually need to be addressed. So I guess I'm pointing out that I'm sort of hopeful that my research will be used or could be used in interventions, and that I am interested in these positive outcomes. I am interested in how negative school climates impact outcomes, but I'm hopeful that we're able to bring change and that we're able to improve adolescents outcomes. So sort of something that I wanted to share at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Gale, for speaking with us today. And thank you to everybody for watching. And I hope you tune in next time for our next Research Spotlight interview.